80% of women who are navigating retirement are living with one or more chronic health conditions. I know, it's a staggering statistic. And for those of us who do have chronic health conditions, the way that we view those health conditions can make a significant impact on how we experience our retirement. Viewing our health conditions as insurmountable obstacles can lead to feelings of despair and hopelessness and isolation. However, viewing these health conditions as challenges that need to be overcome or sometimes accepted can empower us to adapt and grow and lead fulfilling lives. In today's episode, I talk with Pamela Lear, who, like many of us retirees, is facing a chronic health condition, in her case, Parkinson's. Pamela shares her deeply personal experiences and invaluable wisdom on how to embrace retirement and leave a meaningful legacy. You see, Pamela is a writer. She says she's been a writer her whole life, and she just completed her MFA in creative writing at the age of 62. Her written word not only serves as a therapeutic outlet, but also as a vehicle for leaving a legacy, an imprint on the world. Pamela shares the determination to overcome the limitations imposed by her Parkinson's. She emphasizes the significance of resilience and the power of a positive attitude. And she imparts some practical advice for those of us who are dealing with chronic health conditions in retirement. She emphasizes the importance of persistence, asking for help when needed, and maintaining an open mind. So I know you will get a lot of inspiration out of my conversation with my client, Pamela Lear. Welcome to Retire Your Limits, the podcast for women who are ready to rewrite the rule books and redefine what it means to retire. I'm your host, Gayla Beyer, nurse practitioner turned wellness coach for retiring women. Planning this next chapter of our lives can be overwhelming. At least I know it was for me. This podcast is about putting you first, challenging the norms, and unlocking what's possible for you as you step into this new era of retirement. So ready to retire your limits? Let's dive in. Hi, Pamela. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Gayla. It's so nice to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to speak with you about your retirement journey.
It's been quite a journey.
Yeah. I always start the podcast by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. I lived most of my life in Southern California. Now I live in Miami. I've been here for about 11 years. I'm married 40 years next year. Still love my husband. It's great. We have 2 grandchildren here. My husband's been retired for about 20 years, which, as I tell people, means I get to be retired because there's so many things we wanted to do. We agreed that would be the best plan. So in the course of retirement, we've adventured a lot. And right now I'm doing a ton of volunteer work. The one challenge, I guess you could say I have a big challenge in that I have Parkinson's. So you might see me wiggling around a bit. That's the Parkinson's. So much as I try to stay still, that's what happens. And life for the most part, though, is pretty good. Right. And I'm really excited to be able to share with you.
Yes. And so how long have you lived in Miami now?
11 years.
Wow.
We had originally planned to only be here for 5 or 6 years. And we said, if we're retired and if we can move around, we want to experience living in different places. Maybe live up in the mountains for a while. Maybe live in a big city bigger than Miami. Like a New York, a Chicago, something like that. And then my daughter moved to Miami and ended up starting to make some grandbabies. And needless to say, I'm not leaving those grandbabies ever. So I think I'll be in Miami for a long time.
Oh, so that's great. So your daughter moved to Miami and you really had roots. You really had roots in Miami.
Definitely. Plus, I've met an amazing, amazing group of friends and volunteer work that I've become very involved with here. And I honestly can't imagine leaving those friends. They're beautiful people. I feel very fortunate.
So since you've been in Miami, tell me how you've been spending your retirement.
It happens that when we moved here, I discovered a lot of opportunity through the Jewish community. Needless to say, in Miami, it's very, very large and very active. And I found a local synagogue that allows me to get involved and do a lot of the things that are near and dear to my heart. And they give me a lot of leeway. a lot of opportunity. And yet I have the structure of this really large established institution. So I've been involved in large programs on breast cancer awareness. We recently did a big program when we called it Break the Bias, where we were focusing on really impacting and talking about bias in the community on a lot of different levels. And not last by any means, but one of the other major things I've been doing, I tend to do a lot of different things, is I've been working on writing for a long time. And I just did an online writing program where I received an MFA, a Master of Fine Arts in creative nonfiction writing with an emphasis on narrative medicine. And I've been teaching some classes utilizing that narrative medicine focus. So I'm doing that. I'm doing the volunteer work, etc.
Wow, that's fantastic. So it sounds like you've become very involved in your Jewish faith community, helping with programs as they've come up, and you've really found great value in that. And then the other thing that you have mentioned that I'd like to expand on a little bit more is your writing. Can you tell me a little bit more about your writing? I will just preface this by saying the first time I ever spoke with you, the first thing you mentioned was your writing.
Was it?
And how important your writing was to you. So tell me a little bit more about your passion for writing, what that means to you, and how you feel when you're writing and when you're expressing yourself in that way.
So I'm one of those people, I feel like I've been a writer all my life. I've been writing for as long as I can remember, but not doing much with it. So when I turned 60, I said to myself, this is your gift to yourself. You're going to be able to focus on your writing. And I decided to go back to school and get this Master of Fine Arts because primarily I knew I would get a good education, but it also would give me the credibility to get into some of the venues I really wanted to go into, especially the opportunity for teaching. The other key thing that comes up for me with the writing is, as I mentioned earlier, I have Parkinson's disease. I was diagnosed with that when I was 54. So it's been about 7 years. And the interesting thing about that is that my mother had Parkinson's disease. She was also diagnosed at age 54. And the writing became in large part very, very important to me because I wanted to tell our story. And I am working on a memoir now. I write a lot of personal essays and I teach some classes, as I mentioned. But I believe that the writing it's a stress reliever. I do a ton of journaling. I write things and submit them for publication. I go to workshops and conferences where I'm learning about writing. And it is still my number one passion in terms of what I'm doing. I think it's the most important thing. I feel very strongly about leaving some sort of legacy behind, leaving something that speaks for me, and that leaves something in my voice. I'll put it that way.
How long have you known that you wanted that it was really important or meaningful to you to leave a legacy?
That's a very good question. It's hard for me to identify when I knew that, but I will tell you that beginning about 8 years ago, I started doing a class with a woman who lives here. It was all in person and now it's on Zoom. We still do it, called Living and Leaving Your Legacy. And it's really all understanding that the way we're living our lives today is what is going to be remembered for the most part. It's not about the stuff we leave. It's not about the money we leave. It's not about any of those things. It's how we treat people and what we're doing today that makes an impact. So that has taught me a lot about what's important in thinking in terms of who I am and what I'm doing right now. And sometimes, I'd say oftentimes, it gives me the impetus I need to take a bigger risk, to step out a little more out of that comfort zone and do something because, darn it, this is it. This is my dream. I want to make it happen before I can't.
I love it.
And so that's been a real important thing. There's a thing called an ethical will in Judaism that's been a tradition for a very, very long time where people are encouraged to write relatively short. I guess you could call it a moral will, a message for the people who come along in the future regarding what you felt was maybe most important. The messages you'd want to pass on how you hope they live their lives and what you hope they get out of their lives.
Wow, that's great. What's that called again?
An ethical. It's called an ethical will.
Will.
Yeah.
And is that something you write
I have written an ethical will. It probably took me 5 years to write what is a grand total of 2 pages. But it's that thoughtful. And I'll tell you something interesting about it. It's very short and it's a message to my children. And it basically lists 10 things that I hope they'll find as important in life as I did. The really beautiful thing about it is my mother passed away almost 3 years ago now. And it was very difficult. Well, it's always difficult, I think, when we lose our parents. But in my particular situation, my mother, she died of the Parkinson's. It really got to her in the end, but she died during COVID. And so she died 2,000 miles away and I couldn't go see her and I couldn't go see her. As I said. So we had a lot of phone calls and we had a lot of, FaceTime. And as she was fading away, I'm running out of things to say because I'm heartbroken. I'm so sad. It's so difficult. And I whispered to my sister who's there with my mom. She was the only one of 4 siblings who was there. I said, help me. What do I talk about? And she said, well, you told me about this ethical will you wrote. Maybe you want to read that to Mom. So I pulled it up on my computer and I read it to Mom. And at the end, and I'm going to get a little choked up now, at the end, I read it and my sister said, Mom is nodding and Mom has a few tears in her eyes. And I said, Mom, I just want you to know all those things I said in that ethical will, I learned them from you.
Oh, that is so beautiful.
And so not only am I so glad that I wrote that ethical will for my children, but I was able to share it with my mother on her deathbed in a way that I hope let her know how much she meant to me.
Yes.
Talk about a legacy. That to me was it was a beautiful thing that will always have so much meaning.
Wow, that's wonderful. So it sounds like about 8 years ago or so, you felt this draw to leave a legacy. And it took you a long time as you kind of worked through this framework of an ethical will to kind of think about how am I living my life every day so that I can leave a legacy to my loved ones.
I mean, that's what I learned from this beautiful teacher named Merle Saperstein, who teaches that. I've been in classes with her for 8 years now, and it's amazing.
Wow. Yeah. So do you see yourself leaving your legacy through your writing?
I'm hoping, as I said, that the writing will leave a legacy, at least in my voice. It's not the legacy. The writing is the legacy. It's the message. It's the experience. It's the perspective, really, the way I'm choosing to look at life and the way I'm choosing to live life. I think that's where the legacy lies. And hopefully that will come across in the writing. But honestly, I have to say I've lived my life so fully. I've been so fortunate. I've been able to work with and be with so many beautiful people that I look at it and say, if I don't get that memoir done, finished, published, whatever, I'm satisfied. Life is really, really good. And just to keep enjoying it and I think it's all about, I have this philosophy that the reason we were put on this earth was to be present for each other. And as long as I'm living my life based on that premise, I'm good.
I love that. I love that.
Thank you.
So a couple of things come up as I was listening to this story. And the first one is that both you and your mother were diagnosed with Parkinson's at the same age. And you watched her go through the transition of her Parkinson's. Can you tell me a little bit about how that affected you and your experience with the Parkinson's?
Yeah. So my mother had Parkinson's diagnosed for 25 years. And the last 15 years, honestly, were hell. They were very, very difficult years. And she was a fighter to the extent that she took all kinds of risks and all kinds of crazy things because she was determined to live life no matter what. And we took care of her, myself and my siblings, and it was not easy. So when I was diagnosed, of course, it was shocking, frightening. We did discover a genetic mutation that we shared. Fortunately, it doesn't appear that anyone else has the disease at this point in our family. But what happened, I think, was the way I looked at my mother, the way I understood her changed dramatically over the course of the 5 or 6 years that she was still living while I had the disease. because as you may know, it's a neurodegenerative progressive disease. It does get worse. I know that I look like you can't tell anything's wrong. Thank goodness for modern medicine, because if it wasn't for modern medicine, I would not be functioning at all. The way it's just amazing what it can do. But I was very impatient with my mother. I was very demanding. I was very critical. I was very impatient. I was very harsh, and not understanding at all who she was, what she was going through. And as we got closer to the end of her life, and especially in the last couple of years since she passed away, I've had an entirely newfound realization in regard to who this woman was that was there for me. So I think the most important thing I've learned from all that is to try and not be so judgmental and so harsh in regard to the way people behave. And for that, I'm really grateful.
So did you think both of you having the Parkinson's, did that bring a newfound understanding with your relationship with your mother?
Oh,
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, not as much as I would have hoped before she died. It did to some degree, not as much as I would have hoped, but afterwards. And then I feel sad, of course, that we couldn't come to terms more before. But now I look at the fact that I've still got this whole life ahead of me. I can still make so much more of a difference in the world now as I proceed, as I go on. It's like having been given license to a whole new life. And that's how I choose to look at a lot of things. There's always a way to look at it that's more positive, constructive, open-minded.
Tell me how living with Parkinson's is affecting your drive to leave a legacy.
So the Parkinson's is ever present all the time. It affects me in ways that people can't see, as it is with so many diseases, so many invisible disabilities, as we call them. It has slowed me. I was always the Energizer Bunny. It has slowed me down tremendously. It affects everything I do. Sometimes I can't even use a keyboard. Sometimes I can't get my earrings in. I had to try 3 times over 2 hours to get this earring in. Sometimes I can't get dressed or undressed myself. Thank God for my husband. And it slows me down a lot. So in terms of leaving a legacy, it's probably more important than ever because I am that much more aware of a limited amount of time. It wouldn't surprise me if I was in a wheelchair, if I was a wheelchair user in 5 years. It really wouldn't. It'd break my heart, but it wouldn't surprise me. And I'm learning how to adjust. I'm learning how to modify. So it's that much more important that I get my messages together and make them available. Also, my mother was so difficult and had such a hard time in the end. The grandchildren, that's all they remember of her, is a really, really difficult woman that they didn't love being around. I don't want to be that person. So I have a very different way of looking at life, and I'm determined to learn from some of what she did and hopefully to pass on those lessons that I learned.
Yeah. So I work with women who have health issues, health conditions, and they look at those conditions as a barrier to doing the things that they really want to do. You have the Parkinson's and, you follow your passion anyway. So tell me how you do that.
Honestly, it's a matter of perspective and attitude. I feel like time is short and I am not willing to give up anything that I don't have to. I did give up driving 2.5 years ago. That was one of the hardest things I had to do. But by the way, I found out when I let my car go, taking Ubers wasn't half as expensive as owning a car. So there's a perfect example of you just don't know. You might lose the freedom of having your own car, but these days you can get around everywhere you need to. The way I look at life is there's always another way. There's always another way to look at it. And, there's that phrase we use so much these days. You create your own story and your story gives you power. So when I get frustrated, and I do, and when I get angry at whatever, whether it's a person, a situation, an institution, which I do, I have a very bad temper in fact. I'll get all excited and then there's got to be another way to look at this, a rational way that can get people's attention and that can make a difference. I don't want to go to bed at night angry. It's kind of like they say, make sure you kiss your husband goodnight, no matter, even if you're angry. Don't go to bed mad. It's not worth it. I have been known in the past to burn my bridges, to make people angry. And I tell you what, the rebuilding process, 10 times, 20, 100 times harder than not doing that in the first place.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. So I find it's worth it I deal with a lot of people, whether or not they even have issues, health issues, who just, we just can't do that. And when people say that to me, it's like, okay, I feel a challenge coming on. You say I can't do that? You just watch me.
Yeah.
Go make things happen. It's just, the way I look at everything, it's more fun to be attacking the problem in a positive, constructive, let's make friends and work together kind of way than it is to sit home and just be angry at the way the world works. So my story could be, yes, I am becoming more and more disabled, which, by the way, I've turned into an amazing opportunity because now I do a tremendous amount of advocating for disabled people. I just put in a big proposal for a program for people with disabilities in our county. And there's some other things I'm involved in on that regard. So I wouldn't understand or know that much about disability if I wasn't experiencing it face to face myself.
Yeah. So what I hear from you is that you actually looked at the Parkinson's as an opportunity to be able to understand and support other people who have disabilities. And as a realization that your time is precious and what you do each day makes a huge difference. And then when you're doing that, then you're starting looking at, how you look at your day, how you react to other people in your lives. Go ahead.
I'll tell you one more thing. The more love and positive feelings and faith in people, I don't mean religious faith, but just faith in people being good who they are, the more you get that back. You put it out there, it comes back in spades. Just try it. That's all I can say. Just try it. I learned from somewhere many, many years ago, if you're in a bad mood, pick up the phone, call a friend, and pretend you're smiling and pretend you're happy. And in 5 minutes, I guarantee it will be.
Fake it till you make it.
Absolutely.
So on those days when you're really struggling with the Parkinson's, how do you adjust to those difficult times? I think this could be so helpful for other people who are struggling with this, who give up. They don't see a way out and they give up. And so how do you move through these challenges that the condition puts in front of you?
Well, first of all, if I feel like crying or I feel like screaming, I do it. Get it out of your system. Don't let it fester. Hopefully you don't take it out on someone else. Once in a while you do and you have to apologize, but sometimes I will just scream, cry to the point where I'm exhausted and I have to take a nap. Okay. The other thing I find, though, is that being real, honest, vulnerable with people makes all the difference. I recently started a little series of video logs on my Instagram account, which I had never done before. And the first one I started after a writing workshop where they told us, if you ever want to get published, really published a book, you need to get out there and have a platform. Okay, I'll get my little platform. I was in a hotel room and I had a towel on my head in the morning and my meds weren't quite working, which means my mouth was a little bit harder to move and harder to understand. And I was laying there in the bed and I turned on the camera. I said, hi, this is going to be my Parkinson's blog. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it's like to have Parkinson's. And then I proceeded to tell a funny story about how I won't tell it. Maybe you'll see it someday on my video log.
Put a link to your Instagram account in this show notes.
Okay, great. And I proceeded to tell a couple of very short, small stories of how the Parkinson's had affected me in my daily behavior and how it had embarrassed me. Oh my gosh. Really embarrassed me. My friend said it was funny. I don't know. And then the next time I did a little video log from the airport in Newark. But then the third time I decided to share something really personal. And what I shared was that as a result of some of the medication I'm on, I'm losing a lot of hair. I'm having rapid hair loss. My hair that used to be thick and long and dark and spectacular is going away. So I went and got myself a fancy schmancy hairpiece. It's not a wig. It's what they call a hair topper because it kind of fills in for where my hair is lacking. But at first, I'm thinking, I don't want anyone to know that I'm wearing this hair topper. It's embarrassing. So why the hell is it embarrassing? How many friends have I had, God forbid, God bless them, who've had breast cancer and have lost all their hair? That's not embarrassing. So why would this be? And so I put it out there for the whole world to know that this is a hair topper, and damn it, I feel good when I'm wearing it.
Yeah.
You know, because I feel like I look so much more attractive, and I feel good. I do it for me.
So it sounds like when you come upon these challenges, you let your feelings out. You allow yourself to grieve.
Gotta be honest.
Because
Gotta
there
be
is
real.
a grieving of a loss of what our expectation was of what we hoped for our lives, right? So there's a grieving that goes with that. There's anger that goes with that because it's challenging and difficult, and some of that can potentially be directed at other people because other people are not considerate. They're not living with it. So they don't really understand the challenges that you're dealing with. And so you let this out, you get these feelings out so that they don't just fester and build up. And then you modify your life so that you feel great about yourself. You get a hair topper. How about help? A lot of women just don't want to ask for help. Are there ways that you incorporate some help in your life? I know you're taking Ubers instead of driving now, but other ways that you're getting help.
You have to ask for help. And I'm very fortunate. I've got some great friends and they're constantly trying to help. And sometimes I'm like, hold on, I'll let you know when I need and what I need. Bless them. So I have my husband. I'm very fortunate. He's a really good guy and he will help me with whatever he can, but he just doesn't get certain things. You know what I mean, ladies? He can't do my hair. He has a hard time putting an earring in. He just doesn't understand girl things. And also, I don't want my husband to be my nursemaid. That's about the last thing I want. We're going on 40 years of marriage. I do not want him to be my nursemaid. So what I have done is I've hired someone who comes in just 2 or 3 days a week, 2 or 3 hours a day. So anywhere from 6 to 10 hours a week, depending on what I need. And she helps me with everything. She helps me with organizing my life. She helps me with getting my medications straight because that's a whole process. She helps me run errands when I want to go out and do more, but my husband's busy with something else because he's got a life and I want him to have a life. She helps me with paperwork. She helps me with so many things. She's a wonderful woman. I got very lucky in finding her. She's been with me for 1.5 years now. Yes. And if I need help, I will ask for help. And people are very willing and very happy to help. Oftentimes they just don't know what to do or what to say.
I know that you have an interest in helping people to navigate the healthcare systems with the condition because that is a whole thing. As a nurse practitioner being on the other end of it, I see it as well. So tell me how you have navigated this system yourself and how you want to help other people to do that.
I will be the first to admit that I'm part of this white, privileged, educated, financially comfortable group of people that has been very fortunate to be able to access the health care that I need. I also know how to ask for what I need. That said, my number one piece of advice to anyone is demand and persist. You have a right to whatever it is you need. And if you don't feel they're listening to you, if you don't feel you're being heard or you're getting what you need, you persist. You just don't give up. And I've had many situations where I had to persist and persist and persist. And eventually it usually comes through. There's still medications my doctor wants me on that the insurance won't pay for. And so we're trying to work around that. But that would be my number one piece of advice to people. Go in with lists of questions. Get involved in medical studies. I've been involved in a very wonderful study for 8 years now. I pay for being in this medical study and letting them poke and prod me every few months. It's worth it to me. The other thing I will say real quickly that I do is a lot of reading. I have you can see I have a few books and that's just the beginning of them. I do a lot of reading and I do a lot of writing and I do a lot of art journaling. And I do that with other people via the internet mostly these days. And I find that that's a good source of not only letting go, but understanding. I think it was Joan Didion who said, we write so that we will understand what we need to write or what it is we need to do. So I do a tremendous amount of journaling. I was just going to grab one of my journals and show you because a lot of people say, I don't know how to journal. I don't know what to do. So I put my own artwork on every single one of them. Okay. And what I do is I actually decorate inside as well. So you can see the pages. Some of these are torn out because I'm in the middle of scanning them for posterity. You can see I decorate them. I put different kinds of things on each of them. I write anything and everything that comes to mind. I use a gazillion different pens, pencils, colors, paints, whatever, stickers, collage, stencils. I do all of that all the time because it makes me happy. And I go through one of these in about every 6 to 8 weeks, and you can just see pages after pages after pages that I write just to get my thoughts out. Sometimes there's diagrams, sometimes there's pictures, sometimes there's cutouts. I find it to be very, very helpful when it comes to relieving stress.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know we've talked a little bit about your writing and how important your writing is to you and what a legacy those journals are as well. I mean, they're beautiful, first of all, and what a way to share your heart. And the other thing that we've talked about with journaling, I think that is so important is, first of all, you're able to get your thoughts and your feelings out on paper. And also then you're able to use what you've created as a mirror to get insight into your subconscious. So I just love that. Well, this is just wonderful, Pamela. So any parting thoughts about women who have health conditions that they just feel is a roadblock to being able to have a fulfilling and meaningful retirement? And other insights or thoughts or recommendations?
My primary advice is to persist, as I said before, and to get out there even when you don't feel like it and put that smile on your face, because it will pay off. You will get the smiles in return. You will get the people who want to come talk to you in return, but you have to play the part. And I'm not talking about putting on an act. I'm talking about digging deep enough to find that you inside who really does want to be there, who wants to be interacting with other people. And it's not always easy. I had an experience just last week where I went to an event at a place that I go to regularly, and they had a beautiful spread of food, all these things. I walked into the room where that was happening, and there wasn't a single chair. It was designed for those high cocktail tables. People were supposed to stand and the room was supposed to flow. And I said, I can't stand there. Can't stand still for more than a couple minutes. So I had to go outside the room into a space that just wasn't part of the party. No one came out there. A couple of people waved at me on the way to the bathroom. That was not fun. And I got so upset. Why didn't they put in some chairs? They should have known. And it's true, they should have. But you know what? I should have been more prepared too. I should have brought a walker if I needed that. I should have had a wheelchair. I should have gone and said to someone, excuse me, I need a chair. Could you please accommodate me just this one time? And they would have. But I was so angry and frustrated and how dare they, that I sat out there and was miserable. I took offense. And you know what? What good did that do? It did no good at all.
Yeah.
So I could have had such a great time that night if I had just said, there's another way to look at it. And that's my philosophy and my advice to everyone. If you don't like the way it's going, find another way to look at it. There's always a way.
Find another way to look at it.
Joy.
So how do you find? So then the next question is going to be, Pamela, well, how do you find a better way to look at it? Right? We're stuck.
Well, you use your imagination. I did an interesting exercise with one of my classes recently where we wrote a story. I said, I want you to write a story about a conflict you're having with someone. And so they wrote the story about this conflict with someone. And then we did a little talking back and forth. And then I said, okay, now I want you to rewrite that story from the perspective of the other person. Wow. Everyone came out with, I had no idea. Once I started thinking about how they might be seeing me, what they might be dealing with that I wasn't thinking about, it was like, oh my God, there's a whole nother way to look at it. So there's putting yourself in different shoes, putting yourself in someone else's place, imagining, it took me a couple days, to be honest. It took me a couple days after that event the other night to say, Pamela, maybe you could have done something different. Oh yeah, I think I could have. So it doesn't happen instantly. It's not easy. It becomes easier over time when you practice. But it's a process. It's a learning process.
Exactly.
And I think that's the key to say, and I know there's another way. I just know it.
I love that. Yeah, because we all have choices about how we do have choices about the way we perceive something or what we believe. We do have choices around that.
Yeah. And I'll just say one last thing about that. And that is that you need to be open to it. Because if your mind is closed to the fact that there could be another way, well, then, sorry, you're not going to get there. And you're going to be miserable. And hard to say, but that's your choice. So you make a choice. You really, really do. Every morning when you wake up, you make a choice.
Any last thoughts about the importance of creating a legacy in your retirement?
Yeah. I mean, I've done some coaching with you, Gayla, and I found that to be supremely helpful. And I've done therapy, I've done coaching, I've done all kinds of things because you know what? It's a lot of work to maintain a positive perspective. And it's always good to go out and get some help. So I definitely advise that kind of thing. And I guess what I say, look around you, whether it's friends, whether it's relatives, whether it's your grandchildren, there's another way. And there's a different perspective, and your legacy is going to be how you live your life right now today. That famous quote, I don't recall who said it. I wish I did, but they said, people are going to remember the way you made them feel, not what you did, how much you gave them. They're going to remember how you made them feel. So go out there, make someone else feel good. I guarantee you it will make you feel good.
Yes.
Guarantee it.
Well, what an excellent way to end our talk today. I really appreciate you being here. We'll put links to both your website and your Instagram page in the show notes.
Well, I just want to say, Gayla, thank you for, number one, inviting me. It's a tremendous honor and an opportunity to get really excited and share the things I'm so passionate about. And just getting to know you, your enthusiasm, you do so much to make me feel like $1,000,000. And I hope I do that for others, because to me, that's what it's all about.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I hope you found some inspiration from my conversation with Pamela Lear. Pamela's story is a reminder that our retirement is not defined by our health conditions. It's defined by the way we choose to live our lives and the legacy that we aim to create. Thank you so much for joining me for this podcast series, and I'll see you next time.